All right, hopefully everyone has watched the slideshow on the basic anatomy of a compass. And what I want to do now, for those of you who weren't in class or who don't come to class, I want to show you how to do the two simple tasks that we use a compass for in the field in terms of navigating the landscape. And the first one is called taking a bearing. And so taking a bearing involves finding out the direction something is from where you are. So for this exercise, we're going to take a bearing on this big tall white pine tree that is directly in front of me. So from where I'm standing, I want to take a bearing and see what direction that is. And to do that, I basically use the mirror to see the dial of the compass, right? So I'm looking into the mirror, I'm sighting on the tree through the notch, through the sighting notch, and then I simply turn the compass dial until the two red arrows are lined up, right? So what we said in class was the floating red arrow is red Fred, and the fixed red arrow in the compass dial, the one that has a red end and a black end, is the shed. And so what I want to do is align red Fred in the shed, or I want to box the magnetic end of the needle with the needle on the dial. So basically I'm lining up the two red arrows, and then I read my bearing off of the index at the hinge of these mirrored compasses. And so that one is telling me that the tree is about 115 or 116 degrees from where I am. Hopefully you can see that. So simply turning the dial while sighting on the target until the two red arrows are lined up. And I use the mirror so I can see the dial and see when the two red arrows are lined up. And it's important to keep the compass level when you're doing that. The other thing we want to do with a compass sometimes is what's called shooting a bearing. So if I tell you to shoot a bearing, what that means is I want you to follow a predetermined bearing or find out what's along that bearing. So basically I'm going to give you a bearing and I want you to follow it. So in this case, let's say I want to shoot a bearing of 300 degrees. All I do is set my compass to 300 degrees. So I've got it set at the index line, or the indicator at the hinge at 300. And then I turn my body until the two red arrows are lined up. So again, I'm putting red Fred in the shed, but this time I'm rotating my body and I can just look at the dial in my palm, right? And so once my two red arrows are lined up, I can then sight through the notch and find a target that will allow me to walk. So this would send me right over the corner of my woodshed, basically. But that would be shooting a bearing of 300 degrees. So take a bearing is when I find the direction that something is from where I am. And shooting a bearing is when I want to project a bearing and find a target along it or walk along a predetermined bearing. So I want to go in a certain direction from where I am. So that's take a bearing, shoot a bearing. Those are the two basic land navigation tasks that we use our compass for in the field.